Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, we've got a real treat. Mark Firth is in the house. Mark is the founder of B2B Growth Team. He spent a large portion of his life working a corporate job in London. He worked for companies like IBM, Siemens, but he left feeling unfulfilled. He was in search of answers and an 11-year journey from the UK to Colombia for a decade. Fell in love and started a family and then a business. He finally made it to Florida on an investment visa supported by his business. He runs B2B Growth Team, which has helped hundreds of B2B consultants to land clients through a mix of organic and paid business strategies. If you don't know Mark, he is all over Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, similar platforms where he teaches his followers how to scale their consulting businesses, escape cold messaging, and build B2B virtual event funnels so they can reach more prospects. You can find him at markfirthonline.com. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, rather than the other way around. I'm really excited to be here, and I've just learned all about the definition of hustle, which I think we'll be covering today, right?
For sure. Well, we're going to talk more about you than we talk about us, but I'm excited. I've been following you now on LinkedIn for probably a good 9 months, and kind of your process inspired me a bit. And I've kind of always had you bookmarked as someone who'd be really interesting to have on the show because there are so many consultants and entrepreneurs out there listening to the show. And a lot of what you promise and talk about on your website and a lot of the awesome content you're promoting every day on LinkedIn, I think is a lot of the answers that our listeners are looking for. So before we jump into some of the tactical stuff, Mark, tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got to where you are now.
I think it's a really interesting question. I'll try and give you the highlights, but I think like a lot of people that maybe are watching this, they might be at some stage of this journey. I spent my 20s deep down knowing that corporate wasn't right for me, and I think I always knew that I was destined to start a business, but kind of got slapped down by my brain every time I dared to bring it into my consciousness. Fear, lack of knowledge, whatever you want to call it, but I never did it, and I ended up leaving corporate because great people, just not my people. Okay work, not my work. I didn't want to be there, right? And I still wasn't brave enough to start a business, so I ran away. And I ended up in Colombia, going to Colombia for 3 months, ended up staying almost 11 years, left with kids and a family, and made it into the States. And the only reason I stayed in Colombia so long is I found something that I liked more than I liked staying stuck and staying in fear. And so I made the business work in order to stay. And I had to make the business to work because we had an unexpected, there's a baby on the way, and then there was no way to stay apart from getting a business going. And I guess that the lesson I take out of all this is if you want something enough, you make it happen, right? And you do the work. And that's how I've ended up here in Lakeland, Florida. That's Central Florida. It's not one of the trendy places, but I love it.
That's cool. So what was the business you had when you were in Colombia?
So initially I had a business, well, I had two. Our first one was an English teaching business, and that was okay. And but it failed. I learned a lot from it. So it didn't fail. It taught me a lot, right? The second one was sales training for Colombian companies that were wanting to break into Europe and the US, cross-cultural sales training. Because my background's B2B sales. That's what I did in my 20s. And that did okay. And that had to close, though, because of visa regulations. And then the third one was the one that we currently have that's, as we're recording, it's 2023, March-ish. And that started 2017. So that's the one that's worked, so to speak. 2 fails, 1 worked.
So is that the same business you're running today?
Yeah, it's had various brand names and various incarnations of how we've targeted, how we've positioned, what we've done and what we haven't done. But it's, essentially still the same business, targeting the same market. I would say for 3 years now, we've run the same funnel to the same market and just made some cosmetic adjustments. For the 2.5 years before that, it was just like flailing around in the dark, right? Trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and lots of big pivots. So that's where we're
So Mark, one of the things I think is interesting, you kind of just slide it past there, but when you talk about your past businesses, you're almost almost flippant about the fact like, oh, that failed. Oh, well, that failed. Right. But, you continue to innovate and get up and, to your point, learn from to move forward. One of the things that I always think is interesting about successful people is like, how do they get their mind right? Because there's so many people that would have gone through some of those challenges you went through and just said, you know what, I'm going to go back. I'm going to just go back to what's safe and secure. So from a mindset perspective, how do you kind of keep your head right to continue moving forward?
So from a mindset perspective, how I keep my head right, and I had to train and learn and develop this skill. And I've had a series of great mentors, and one of them, there's always a message, right? There's always, you hear the same message multiple times, and maybe you'll have heard this message, but the way he described it really, really got me. And that is, you've got a choice when you make any decision that you don't know what will happen when you make that decision. You can have faith or you can have doubt. And the decision of whether you have faith or whether you have doubt will impact how intensely you go into that decision, how intensely you take action, indeed whether you take action. And bring it back very simply, if you're in a room of people who you want to impress and you're about to sit down on a chair, you sit down on the chair because you believe that chair will take your weight. If you don't believe that chair will take your weight, you won't sit down because you'll be left looking very awkward, embarrassed in front of a group of people you respect. And it's the same to any decision when it comes to any decision in entrepreneurship. Like classic, writing a book, doing a landing page, outreach. If you were writing a book and some genie came out of a lamp and said, I'll grant you one wish, and they guarantee this will be a New York Times bestseller, you just got to write the book, you probably write the book, right? The truth is, people don't write the book because they don't expect the results. They haven't trained their brain to have faith. So going back to Michael Jordan, going back to another another kind of influence, that you'll get the messages. The Netflix documentary, Michael Jordan in the Netflix documentary, I can't remember if it was him or one of his teammates said, he always found something to dislike about the opposition. If he couldn't find something, he made it up. So how do you have absolute faith in the ability for you to be successful? You trick your brain, you convince your brain, you lie to your brain until your brain knows that reality. Another influence, Joe Dispenza, meditation. Before I made it into the States, I used to visualize being stood in Disney World with my family every single day for 45 minutes. And nothing happens over a week, nothing happens over a month, but 6 months in, your brain started to believe that reality. And it's tricked itself into believing that you're in that reality, and you start taking the action with faith. Because the future hasn't happened. So you may as well believe that it's going to happen, right? And that's a very long-winded way of saying believe, right?
Classic manifestation.
Yeah. That's how it worked for me.
I love that. So within what you do, you talked a lot about what didn't work. What is not working for a lot of the coaches, consultants, and solopreneurs out there today?
They need to shift their definition and belief system in the way they perceive what is easy and what is not easy. I think that's what it boils down to. Everybody wants the easy route, whether it's health, losing weight, whatever. They all want the easy route. That's why they're opting to these funnels. 10 million leads in 2 days without turning your computer on. 80 grand a month from LinkedIn in 2 days, right? I'm not saying these people are lying, because that might happen. But they automatically default to the easy. And to me, there's a different definition of what's easy. 2 days to an 80 grand a week business with in 2 days. That's the easy they want. What's an easy for lawyers? They have to go and study at college. Then they have to do a certification. Then they have to do a work practice, and they spend $500,000 over the face of 5 to 6 years. So that's easy in order to get the rest of their life, right? For me, 6 months, 7 months, initial clients, 3 months, 4 months, and then a steady income stream. That's the definition of easy I want. If someone said to me that's what I want, and it's this constant battle with people who have gone, oh, it didn't work. And I'm like, well, why didn't it work? Oh, I didn't get the results. Well, how quickly did they say they get results? 2 weeks. Okay, do you want results in 2 weeks, or are you prepared to do 2 months, 6 months work? Taking something as simple as podcast guesting, which is a very good way to get clients. It takes 2 weeks to find the shows, to build up your profile, to make yourself look half decent so people will accept you, to get some content on social media. Then you book in the show. Any good show is going to have one month to 2 month ramp up to get on the show. Then you get on the show, another month to release. And then before you know it, after 5 months, you're in front of a lot of people and you're borrowing their audience, but people won't do it because it's not easy. right? So it's just, for me, it's as simple as redefining the definition of easy. Do you want to be like the get rich quick? And by the way, it's fine to get rich quick as long as you're finding it as the right timeframes. Or do you want to be the lawyer? I think it's somewhere in the middle. People are buying all this trash and then they're blaming the programs when really their expectations are out of line. Does that make sense? It's a very long way of saying it.
No, you're saying it perfect. I mean, I think so many people, we talk about a lot with Hustle, is so many people will do a sprint, right? Anybody can work hard for a day. Anybody can work hard for maybe a month, right? But a lot of what we've seen is people talk about the overnight success, and I was overnight success after 10 years.
Yeah,
I mean, and I think the way you phrase it about just what is the definition of easy. I mean, there's easy and then predictability, right? So to your point, if I've shared the story before where my son, if he's now 13. If I told him he could be an NBA player if he just did X, guaranteed. Still, he may not do it, right? And anyone may not do it. But you're more likely to do it if it's guaranteed. But even if it's guaranteed, there's plenty of people that'll opt up. So then when you start thinking about, and why? Because it's not easy, right? That level of discipline over that period of time isn't easy. But it's those that can commit to it and have kind of that longer term mindset are really the ones that are breaking through and never giving up along the way.
Yeah, for sure. It is. It's interesting. You guys have been in it a while. There's a lot of ups and downs, right? There really is. Yeah.
So when it comes to growing your business, if you're a coach consultant listening to this, almost what I'm hearing you say is that 2x may not be the benchmark you want. Maybe what you should be striving towards is 3x or 4x. How do you go about getting people to trick their brain to believe that those things are possible? Or maybe rephrasing it is setting the right goal.
Me? Because I'm still
helping them, because 10% growth would sound pretty interesting to me 5 years ago, but that's not really a good goal.
You cut out then. Sorry. So you were saying that.
Yeah. So you were saying before that, maybe 2x growth isn't big enough. Maybe it should be 3x, 4x, or 5x. How do you go about helping your clients identify what is the best goal, and then maybe tricking their brain into believing that, yes, this is possible?
I don't know, but I give my perspective because I think everyone has. I think it's very easy to fall in the trap of. Where did I read this from? This book recently. I can't remember the book, but I'm going to kindly ask you reference it. The Psychology of Money. I can't remember the author, but he talks about in the first chapter how he's always going to have more, and I'm paraphrasing, than a lot of people that have made billions because he has something they don't have. What does he have that they don't have? Enough. And so I think it's very easy to fall in the trap of 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x based on the feed, based on what's going on. And easily forget. Take me, like 5 years ago, I would have never believed I'd be sat here in the United States doing this with a business and having a team. And this was, I'd have given anything to get in this position. Now I'm in this position. Sometimes I get ungrateful and I want more. And sometimes I forget my kids love school. They're in a great school. You're still in love with my wife. We've got 2 healthy kids. I'm healthy. And I got to remember, enough is enough sometimes. In terms of the 5X and the 4X, my personal ambition, it's important to find your personal ambition. I don't think I want a corporate business. I think I'll be happy with 3 million, 4 million a year, a reasonably sized team, high profitability, and creating time rather than a unicorn startup and being all over the media. And I think the answer is it's different for everyone, right? How do you get there? I don't know. What's your goal? I think you've really got to detach from the feeds and I hope this comes across the right way as someone that's moved into the United States. The materialism is rampant. I spent 10 years in Colombia where and I've got to be careful. My wife's Colombian and this is no criticism of the country. It's just the way I perceive the reality. It's just my opinion, right? But people buy things and then they buy things so much, they haven't got enough room for the things they buy. So you've got these warehouses where people store them and they go to another warehouse to buy things and then they haven't got room for the things they bought from this warehouse. So they go in a storage warehouse. It's like, how much stuff do you need? Do you know what I mean? So it's just like,
for sure.
How much is enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope that came across the right way, because I don't want to upset people. That's just my opinion.
No, a good friend of mine has a bunch of storage units, and it is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be people that'll pack it away and they'll leave it for years to come.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So one of the things, Mark, for you and your focus is really on the B2B side.
Yeah.
And my day job is running McClone Insurance. So we're a broker of insurance risk management all over the country. And I'm just curious, one of the discussions I've seen a lot of times in kind of the B2B world is this inbound versus outbound sales, right? To your point, there's a lot of organizations that have been very focused on outbound for many years to come. And then there's some that have, shifted to inbound. And, my perspective has often been it's really a marriage of the two. Too many people are kind of black and white on these things. But just kind of curious on your perspective of kind of inbound versus outbound, and specifically in the B2B space, how those kind of get married.
So I agree in essence with what you say. Well, I do agree with what you say about the mix. It's really interesting, isn't it? I heard on the Alex Hormozy podcast the other day, and it's a 17 conversations that changed my life. I've listened to it like 5 times. There's more value in that than a lot of stuff in the social media feeds. And he spoke about how he's been on the side of outbound and outreach and all that, and he would have always been a proponent of that. But now he's been on the other side. He's got 1 million+ followers on YouTube. He's a proponent of that. And it's very easy to say once you've got there. And I think that in there lies the lesson. In order to get going, there's going to need to be some outbound. There's going to need to be some outreach. There's going to need to be some hustle. Hustle being rightly directed work, not just doing anything. But in the process of that, it should not be the expense of building the longer term inbound, because I think where a lot of people do is they just go all in on outbound. And that's not great if you get 5 years down the road and you've got no following, no audience, no one who follows your work, and nobody who's reaching out to you because you're just stuck on the proverbial treadmill. And that's where I think people go wrong. And also the offer, you're in insurance, right? So I was talking about Monday morning problems. Well, some people do, but it's one of those offers, right? Very few people wake up on a Monday morning and go, I need to buy some insurance. They get a renewal, and the renewal happens every couple of years. And when they get the renewal, there's a lot of transaction costs, time, effort, and so on and so forth to change. In other words, it's like divorce relationship coaches for divorce. Not everybody every day is looking for a divorce relationship coach. So therefore, you can only do so much with insurance, and do challenge me if you disagree. You've got to rely on hitting the right person at the right time when it comes to outreach, and that's pure hustle. Whereas if you're doing inbound, you can be top of mind when they reach that point to make that investment. So for businesses where there isn't an immediate pressing problem, there's no choice if you want a business. Do you know what I mean? Insurance, you've got to have that, because otherwise you're just going to be chasing all your life. Does that make sense? You've got to do both. But for me, the ultimate goal should be building that inbound. And by the way, that's what we're doing at the moment. We do outreach, but we're also building YouTube, and we're building all sorts of other places whilst outbound to a certain degree funds it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting when you mentioned before the definition of easy, right? Like one of the things with outbound is, we talk about all the time with our sales team, outbound is extremely predictable.
Yep.
Right. Like you can manage the metrics, and so if you got nothing else if your life depended on you growing your business, outbound works, but to your point, I think your vision of kind of the marriage of where you are in the business cycle and, what are you building for the long term, I think is right on.
Yeah, exactly. It's a mix, right? It's a mix.
For sure.
Mark, while we're talking about outbound, there's a lot of cold messaging happening, specifically on platforms like LinkedIn. And I'm sure you're the victim of a lot of that, as I am.
Yeah.
It appears to me that, and I did a post about this just because, to me, I just shake my head because most of them are really bad. It is a request to connect with immediately followed up with, hey, can I get a half hour on your calendar to sell you this service? And no warm up, no, hey, how are you? What do you do? I put a post out and I said, look, if this is you, you should expect no results? Like, why would anyone connect with you? Why would you even bother? Because it's such a low percentage rate. And someone responded to me, someone that I actually know. He's like, look, Chris, I do it. Like 1 out of 100 is worth it for me. And I was like, how much time do you have that 1 out of 100, you'll send that many requests and essentially spam people? That, to me, that's a spam if that's how you approach it. But yet it seems like it's continuing to grow because obviously there are a few people responding. But what are you coaching your clients as it relates to cold messaging? Or are you not?
You know, we do. And going back to what Dustin has said, cold outreach is always going to work. But I do believe that the entry level skill set to get it to work, the bar is rising. Is that fair to say? With all the AI, I don't know if there's a correlation. We're in like the unknown right now. There's so many that you can personalize messages, you can spam people, so many tools. There's so many ways to spam people now, right? So and there's so many more filters coming on to deal with that. So that the bar is rising and the bar is increasing. And it really, there's so many variables to this conversation because it really also depends what you're selling. Is what you're selling transactional? I mean, insurance to a certain degree is more transactional than a divorce coach, just taking two examples that have already come up in the conversation, to a certain degree, depending on the type of insurance. So if it's a very transactional offer, it's you can play the numbers game. If you're selling enterprise, you've got to hustle, but it's harder to get those appointments and it's harder if it's less transactional. So what do we do to combat, and by the way, the data from Gartner and various market research companies says that the role of the sales call is decreasing. Why is the role of the sales call decreasing? The role of the sales call is decreasing because people have less need for a sales call. They can get access to all the information they need without getting a salesperson on a call. So that's another factor. Combine that with all the AI. So how are we combating it? We're just going at a lower level commitment step. Instead of a call, we're just inviting people to events. And when we invite people to events, we collect email, we collect telephone numbers. So we've got a second bite at it too. So we're building an audience, we're building a list, and we're immediately validating whether an offer works, whether they opt in or not, because it's a much lower commitment step to do that. And that's a very simple way to, A, know that your offer's resonating, market message fit. Number 2, build an audience of people that you can remarket to and follow up with. And number 3, avoid the disillusionment of not being able to book calls. That's how we've been doing it, and that's been working really well. We've also added on to that interview funnels. And I say interview funnels, just interviewing people in your industry, not the objective of landing as a client. That's terrible when I've been through those. But just to get to know people and build relationships, that's another way that's worked really well. But the number 1 is just inviting people to events. That's been fantastic.
Which goes very closely with your virtual event funnel that you help your clients with. I would happen to think that a lot of these coaches, consultants, and salespeople are, for whatever reason, not interested in doing that. Why do you think so many people balk at the idea of hosting an event?
We only sell over events. we do the same thing, and the reason is, for any sale to take place, ultimately, the prospect has to believe something different to what they believed before they interacted with you. And when it comes to educating market, I mean, a lot of the books say it, Breakthrough Advertising, and it says it, and many books say it in various ways, shape, and form. It's one of the most expensive things to do is educate a market and change the belief system. It's much easier to go with the belief system and with the current. And so that's why we do events, because I can't, we have to lead them to believe that it's a worthwhile thing to do. We have to unpack the concepts. We have to deal with the objections. We have to make a case. And that's why we sell using events. And in fact, that's why it works so well for non-transactional B2B, because non-transactional B2B, there's frameworks, there's intellectual property, there's sometimes multiple decision makers, and they have to do that as a matter of course. So to answer, and it's much easier to go, hi, do you want some leads? Hi, do you want some leads? 1 in 100, right? But there's pros and cons to each. I've personally always had more success with the latter and doing the events. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. So where does one start? If you want to host an event, I mean, obviously you need to have something to talk about, but where does a coach, consultant go, especially if you say, hey, I don't have a list, I don't have emails?
So So the first thing they need to do, and this applies more to the coaching niche than the consulting niche, in my personal experience, is they, number one, need to decide if they have a business or they're just messing around pretending they have a business. Because we actually changed our landing page as an experiment, and we were running some ads, and we changed it from B2B consultants. We changed it to B2B consultants and executive coaches. And oh my God, like the revenue took a dive. The amount of no-shows on sales calls went up. The amount of frustrating conversations to find us. We know we can help these people, but they're in their own way. A lot of them, well, I have a business. Okay, what's your business? Well, I'm deciding between this, this, and this. Oh, I have a business, but I'm starting it next week. So first of all, they need to decide if they're starting a business and not looking for an opportunity, because there's a big difference between looking for an opportunity and having a business. Looking for an opportunity means you haven't decided what you're going to do and you're going to land on an opportunity. Having a business means you're 1,000% invested in it, you've taken action and you're going to do it. That's the most important thing to do. That's what the first thing they need to do. The second thing they need to do is they need to know things worth knowing, because the easiest event to do is the Q&A session. What's the Q&A session? Answer the most 10 common questions your clients ask. If you don't know the 10 most common questions they ask ChatGPT. Don't hire anyone, ask ChatGPT. If you don't know the answer to those questions, you've got no business being in business. You don't know enough, right? There's so many, and you've got me on, because it was so frustrating with this tap. We tested. It's an example of a test that didn't work. If you don't know enough in your field, go back. Unless you've got a time machine, you're in trouble. In 2017, 2018, you could get away with not knowing anything. Now there's a much higher barrier to entry to get success online. You have to know something worth knowing. You have to have some form of expertise. You have to have some form of deep sector knowledge. You can't have just done a life search certification, or I'm now an online digital marketing coach because I went with another in the field and they gave me some like certificate they made on some app on Canva, right? You have to know what you're talking about. And if you can't answer the 10 most common questions, don't bother. I'm sorry, that's it. And then if you do, put a landing page in the feed, invite people to it, answer their questions. Because if they feel your energy, that you want to help, if they feel that you know what you're talking about, if they feel you have new ideas, concepts, and they feel most of all they can trust you with their livelihood, their money, and their business and their family, sometimes in those niches, you got no problem. People will soon sniff it out in real-time communication if you know what you're talking about or not, because nonverbal communication, by the way, is much more powerful than verbal communication. You can say all the right words, but they'll know if you know what you're talking about or not, right? And that's my slightly less palatable version of the reality, right? And sorry,
no,
that's how it is, you know?
Well, I think it's interesting even how that ties into what you were talking about with events, right? Because what are the difference between, events versus kind of more of the historical written blogs and things like that, right? As an event, you can feel somebody's passion. You can feel their energy, right? Versus, it's really hard to feel that in the written word. And, you mentioned the word trust, right? Like if people start to trust that you have that, they have that credibility, you have that expertise. And to me, that's what's most interesting about, events, is it's a way even digitally to kind of get belly to belly with people so that you can have real conversations. Correct.
And that's why we do events, by the way, because it's what's always worked for us for those exact reasons.
Yeah.
Mark, you create some killer content specifically on LinkedIn that I've seen about using ChatGPT for business. Can you talk about some of the ways that you're using it, or some of the ways you're coaching your clients to use that?
So we are coaching them on ChatGPT, but the interesting thing is that we had 10,000 views on a video the other day. We had 1,000 watch hours on YouTube, mostly from ChatGPT. And this is it. My ChatGPT videos are not really about ChatGPT. And let me finish. They're just me bouncing off ChatGPT and giving my ideas and thoughts based on the output of ChatGPT. That's it. It's like having an interviewer to bounce off, which I'm sure you do. So the LinkedIn profile one, which had over 10,000, I'm like, okay, so here's the fundamental concepts to build a profile on LinkedIn. You need to solve a problem. You need to do this. Let's put that into ChatGPT. I don't like that because I don't like this because. So ChatGPT is just there to bounce off. And that's really what the deeper message of AI, it's not there yet. to completely build your business, your content, and your business plan. It's there to bounce off and use your knowledge and experience to decide what's good and what's not. And that's worked really, really, really well for the content, because it's given a new life to all the content I've been doing for the last 5 years. That's it, really. Yeah. And that's it.
It's interesting when you...
Sorry, go ahead.
When you've talked about AI, we've often talked about this. There's artificial intelligence and there's actual intelligence, and it's that balance between the two, because they got everybody saying that, well, we're gonna lose our jobs and AI is gonna take over the world. I'm like, in its definition, it's artificial intelligence, right? Which means it's not actual. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of shortcuts and value that AI can create. I'm not downplaying AI, but it's the perfect example of saying, okay, would you want Alexa to run your life? Absolutely not, right? But at the same point, how are you leveraging it, frankly, to increase your actual intelligence?
So is that a question of how we're actually using it in our business practical terms? So we have a team, what do we have, like 4 full-time and 3 contractors at the moment, part-time, I guess. And we're using it in very specific places, and that's to repurpose video content into multiple other channels, the written word, and to repurpose video content to other channels. That's where it's been the biggest time saving to us. In the past, if I was to take a podcast, because we have a podcast, and then I was to do a podcast summary, I'd have to train someone. They'd have to pull out the best bits. They'd have to write it. I'd have to check it. I'd have to hire them. I'd have to chase them. They'd have bad days, good days. Sometimes it'd be good. Like, I put it in ChatGPT, make this transcript into 5 bullet points. Done. Make it into a YouTube headline, 5 options. Done. Make it into a blog post with the right syntax for a blog post. Done. Make it into whatever, right? And it's and so for repurposing of content, that's where we've really used it. We've also used it, and I used it today because we build funnels for clients, a landing page for clients. We were like, they didn't. I was asked questions about their niche because there's no substitute for knowledge about a niche, and he wasn't quite sure on a point. So I was like, let's ask ChatGPT. It gave us everything we needed to take that output and shape it into good copy. It didn't give us the copy, but it gave us the ideas, the problems, the symptoms that niche was experiencing, and ideas to shape into the copy that we knew would work based on experience doing it. So it's no replacement, but it's for all those things. For any sort of copy, if you've written a lot of copy, it's great. That's how we're practically using it.
It's excellent. So, Mark, on that kind of guys, what do you project in the next 3 to 5 years? With AI and tying that to at the higher bar of expertise. What do you see in the next 3 to 5 years? I
think that if it's okay to answer that question by saying what I'm personally doing in the business based on my 5-year prediction, and first of all, is that okay to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I read this week. I've been recommended by so many people. Show your work. Okay. And he speaks about in the first chapter how we're all amateurs. And I feel that we are all amateurs now. No one knows where this is going over 5 years. So we're all amateurs. And I've got to say this, but I'm just actioning based on my best interpretation of what's going on. And what I'm doing is I'm focusing on community, building a community. So we've launched a show, and that show is community. We're interviewing clients, and we're sharing, and we're just a rising tide lifts all boats, right? Building that community element, because AI can't replace community. That's number one objective. These are in no particular order of priority. They just are equal. Number 2, events. We were already onto that. And by accident, I wish I'd say I predicted it, but by accident, AI can't do real-time live interaction. So we're nicely placed for that. We're doubling down on that, getting people on. That ties into number 1. A show is a form of event. Presentation events, we do those, the Q&As. And number 3, video content. Because, it will be able to do deep fake and all that, and people are always going to consume trash content, right? But I do believe there's going to be a place, at least for the next 5 years, for video. So they're the 3 things we're focusing on. Where will AI take us? It will probably replace a lot of written work, a lot of customer service work, and I'm going on this based on an interview I saw with Sam Altman on Lex Friedman, the They were talking about this yesterday, and there's a survey floating around giving the probability of the jobs going. Programming will be cheaper, customer service, high graphic design, written word. Yeah, I'm not focusing on those. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, excellent.
I would love to know, what's your opinion? I'm always learning on this. I'm an amateur on this.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're right on. I mean, when I look where, similar for us and where we're going, I mean, I think, there's some very tactical things that will, as been the case in the last 10 years, right? I mean, that'll be more automated, that will, find more shortcuts and things like that. Yep. But, to me, I still look at, how does business get done? Business gets done by people talking to people, and that trust transfer. And I think your element of the bar being higher, I think that's certainly, I agree. And I think it's really just, in a lot of ways, a huge opportunity for the best performers in each industry. So to me, those that, frankly are not providing real value in content or, things to create awareness. Well, now those can just be automated with AI. But the real nuggets, the real kind of mind movers of information, AI isn't going to do that. They're not going to be able to package that way, right? AI isn't going to, like when you're talking about events, or even video, there's a lot of people talking about, well, AI can do video. Well, yeah, I mean, it can do some stock video and some fake video, right? But it's not, I mean, it's not going to be this, right?
Yeah, agreed. I like the way I like trust transfer. That encompasses what I said in like 5 minutes into 2 seconds. Much better answer.
I'm just cueing it from you.
It's so true. What a great way of putting it. Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people that still don't know what it is. And it'll be interesting to me in about 2-3 years when it becomes more mainstream, because I've talked to people in corporate America, I mean, specifically my wife. She's like, what's that? How does that work? How would that benefit me in HR type of thing? And I think it can. I think it can benefit almost anybody in any job, just about. And I think it will become more mainstream. It will be accepted in other industries where maybe it's not so much right now. And I think there'll be more people talking about it, because I also feel like there are some people right now who are maybe ashamed or afraid to admit that they're utilizing that for various things and tasks. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what it looks like 3 to 5 years down the road. I have the premium version, and it is pretty interesting to see how that's developed from GPT-1 to 2 and so on. But as I've started to think about this, I mean, I've been using AI already for a couple of years. There are many tools like Descript. I mean, obviously there's Midjourney. There are hundreds of tools in the market that utilize AI some way, shape, or form that we don't even know. So a lot of times yeah, exactly. So when people say, I don't think that's for me, I'll never use it, I could list off dozens of tools that they probably already use. So who knows? But I'm excited for the future of AI.
Me too.
So good.
Mark, last question from me. You mentioned before LinkedIn, and specifically LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Are you leveraging LinkedIn Premium any way, shape, or form? And is that something you feel like your clients should be using?
So it's got this, what a great business. They've got the commercial usage gate, haven't they, right? Which means that when you've used a certain amount of time on LinkedIn, you're forced into an upgrade. What a great business model, by the way. So I'm forced into it, right? Every now and again. I don't when I can avoid it. It's useful. I don't actually love Sales Navigator. My focus on LinkedIn has been content now for the last, don't even know, 9 months. And that bridge we were talking about earlier, we've done like 4 years of outbound. I'm like, it's time, right? I can't do that for the rest of my life. So it's not as useful to me as it was, but sometimes it forced me into it.
I kind of feel the same way. It's what is it, $100 now?
Yeah. Well, by the way, if you cancel it, they'll offer you half price. I do that like every so often.
Pro tip. That's the Mark Firth promo code right there.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So we've had you on the show now for 40 minutes. We're really appreciative of your time. For all those coaches and consultants listening, what's a final takeaway that you want to leave with people who are listening, thinking, how in the hell am I going to grow my business?
Have faith. Goes back to the very beginning of this. Have faith, take action. The majority of people are stuck. Like they want to drive from Florida to San Diego and they're waiting to see the state line for California before they get started. There's no map. It's not there. You just got to get started and have faith. It'll be good. That's it. That's it.
I love that. I believe it. You can write the map as you go. There's no doubt about that.
You've got to get started.
Take action. That's the biggest thing I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is they think about it, they want it, but they don't want it enough to take action.
Correct.
So yeah, I love that. Mark, thank you so much for your time. We're very appreciative of your time today being on the show. For all the listeners out there, thank you for your ears. We sincerely appreciate you tuning in for another episode. We'll see you next time. Peace.